some point.
There you go.
Okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance. I am your hostess, Alacia Stinker.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How's it going, Lacey?
Excellent, excellent. We finally got some beautiful weather here in New York where I'm at. Sunshine is out. How about you on the West Coast?
Oh my God, it's gorgeous out here. It's total Gulf weather. It's like 60s, 70s, sunny. Yep.
That's so perfect. I feel like it's been slow in coming, but I'm super excited that we're here. I'm also super excited about all the shenanigans in the news. What do we got queued up there today?
Oh, we got some fun stuff in the news today. Kind of got a theme going. See if you can guess it. But we're going to start with Lauren Boebert.
Guess that theme.
Lauren Boebert, for those of you who don't know, she's the representative from Colorado. She's been having a hard time. Her numbers are in the toilet. She's getting divorced from her husband. I guess when they served him papers, he got upset and I guess attacked the process server who was serving him the divorce papers, or there was some altercation there. And he's been in trouble before. If you guys don't remember, he has a previous conviction for showing his genitals to some teenage girls at a bowling alley.
Oh, wait, this is her husband?
Yep. You don't remember this story?
Oh.
This one was a
No,
while.
I don't remember
Yeah.
this story. Oh.
Yeah.
This is now vaguely sounding familiar, but I don't know if I had this totally had them pinned together on this.
No, I think you might have clipped it out because it was kind of a stupid story. But there was that, and then so that's all going on. Oh, her teenage son, he's like 18. He's having a kid, I guess, with a girl who's the same age or younger. Maybe she's 17. I don't know. So there's that going on. Anyway, new thing came out about a personal life that's really unfortunate. And we have David Pakman here, who, if you're not familiar with, he does a show on YouTube that's really good. He's a former professor, political science professor, but he's going to go through this story. And it's not a happy story. Just like all the stories with Lauren Boebert, they're all fairly depressing in some way.
And so we're not going to make light of this. Lauren Boebert, the radical and repugnant, sanctimonious Republican congresswoman, who talks about how Christianity is the one moral path and Christianity needs to be involved in civil government and all these different, how everybody else is a bad parent if they have a trans kid or if they're gay or whatever. Okay, that Lauren Boebert was potentially involved in covering up her own then husband, soon to be ex-husband's alleged child abuse against one of her own kids. There is the story of the facts, and there is the story of Lauren Boebert's, I know with Ron DeSanctimonious, it sounds crazy to use the word, but her sanctimonious pleading about how she is the moral one when she may have been involved in this. So let me tell you what the allegations are. In December, Lauren Boebert's teen son called 911. And the reason that her son called 911 was to report that his dad, Lauren Boebert's husband, was abusing him. That he was, quote, throwing me in the house. The teen sobbed through the 2-minute call, saying he didn't understand why his dad was mad. The boy called back soon after, suddenly denying it happened, with Lauren Boebert jumping on the call to say the boy is fine. Okay?
All right, so that's the story. I mean, that's just sad. I mean, I feel bad for that kid, man. I mean, what are you going to do? And mom's a congresswoman, so, you know, it's going to be hard to fight back against. Did I lose you? Hello? Are you there? Are you back?
Yeah, you were frozen with me.
Yeah, you froze too. That's cool. I can clip that out. Was you there? Are you with me now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the kid. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's everything's just a shit show with this woman. I mean, you know, she's terrible. And part of the reason he was calling her sanctimonious and stuff is she's been one of those people that says, she is one of those people that says, look, voting is not a right; it's a privilege kind of people. She's one of those people that thinks that the Constitution says that Christianity should be the law of the land, even though the First Amendment specifically says we're not going to make any law in regard to religion. Right? I mean, but she's literally a theocrat. And she's one of those that touts the I'm the moral better one. And it's like, yeah, but your husband's an alcoholic who shows his dick to teenage girls and apparently beats your son, and you cover it. You know? So it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's just amazing to me. I don't know if you had any more comments about that, but it's terrible. Are you still there?
I mean, no, really, it's just an example of somebody trying to use a God stamp, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a Christian, therefore it's, it's a get out of jail free card kind of thing.
I guess.
But you never see like
it's like all of the mess in my life and all of the things that I say are wrong. Well, never mind. It's if it's happening in my family and all of those things are suddenly okay, or we don't need to look at them, but as soon as it's somebody else, we got to point the finger and
right.
We have to condemn them and judge them, and which is it? Which way?
I don't know. It's one of those you hear it all like, well, as a Christian, right? Like that's like some sort of little get out of jail free card, like that instantly makes you a good person, right? You can't use it the other way. I can't get as an atheist. I didn't burn down that children's hospital. No, see, it doesn't work. Nobody will believe me.
I feel like you should try to make that a thing.
As an atheist. At least you know I'm not bullshitting you.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of taking advantage of young children.
Well, that's a hell of a segue that I think we should always avoid.
No, but yeah, so Republicans in a bunch of states like Iowa and there's a bunch, Arkansas, they're trying to, okay, so there's a labor shortage right now in the country. So we could open up the borders and allow more immigrants. We had that whole thing with Florida where they passed more laws against immigration. And what happened? Nobody showed up to work. Like 20% of their workers just vanished overnight because they were all immigrants. We could do that. That would be one thing. We could, I don't know, throw more money into education so these people have more job training and skills and they can get better jobs. That would be like a vote on me. But the easier, better solution the Republicans have found is, you know what? Why aren't these 14, 15, and 16 and 17-year-olds working? Let's roll back child labor laws and get kids working again. And let's
just have them running like big machines in factories again, and that's a great idea.
It's a phenomenal idea, and that's Anna Kasparian is going to talk about it right here. Let's see if I got this. Right here. Here we go. This is Anna Kasparian with the Young Turks.
Across the country have begun rolling back child labor protections because, of course, you have corporations that really, really need more labor that they can exploit and pay as little as possible. Children are perfect for that. Now, Iowa is one of those states, and thanks to the work of More Perfect Union, we now have restaurant groups and other businesses in need. We know about the restaurant groups and other businesses looking for cheap labor and how they fueled the efforts by state lawmakers to propose this bill and potentially pass it. So before we get to the industries behind the bill, the money behind the bill, why don't we tell you what the bill actually does? Again, this is in the state of Iowa. It was sponsored by a Republican state senator by the name of Jason Schultz. Let's watch.
The next part of the bill was clearly written for the Iowa Restaurant Association, Hotel and Lodging Association, and National Bureau of Independent Businesses, the state leaders in low-wage jobs. It would allow 14-year-olds to work in giant freezing meat lockers and raise their mandatory clock-out time from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then 11 p.m. in the summer.
The research that has been done has found pretty clearly that 20 hours is kind of a cutoff, and when kids work more than that during the school week, the grades start to plummet, and their school completion rate starts to plummet.
That's not even a joke. Kids who work more than 20 hours a week, much more likely not to finish high school.
Well, as a high school teacher, see, I can have an as a something too. Incredible here. So, as a high school teacher, I can tell you, I teach 10th graders,
right,
and sometimes 11th graders, mostly the 10th graders though. And that's when you're 16. It's kind of the age where you just start getting jobs sometimes. And I can see a huge difference when students start getting jobs. I start noticing late to school more, missing morning classes more, falling asleep in class more work not getting turned in. And I don't have the data on how many hours per week, but that's just becoming employed at all. So you go knocking those ages lower and increasing the number of hours, and I don't see positive trends coming out of that. I only see it exacerbating something that's already somewhat problematic where education is concerned.
Well, and then having kids, like I said, you can do meat lockers and working in different temperatures. Then on top of the fact, we're going to push it back to where, now you're 14, we can work you till 11 o'clock at night. Or fire you. Right? Well, 11 o'clock at night, that kid's got to get up and be at school at 7:30 in the morning. That's not enough time.
It looked like they were only saying 11 o'clock at night was a summertime thing.
Well, it was a summertime thing, but still, I mean, how many of those kids are going to probably be in summer school because they were barely keeping it up during the year? Right?
That's true. Summer school is a real thing, so some of them probably really do still have school.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where it's just a drag. I think it's just horrible. And then, like we talked about a little bit earlier about this subject of 14. They're talking about in some of these states, you could be 14 and working at a bar. And we were talking, let's have can you imagine going to a bar and your bartender's a 14-year-old girl?
Okay, first of all, I do not want a 14-year-old pouring me drinks. It creeps me out.
I don't want a 14-year-old in the freaking building.
Yeah, well, okay, it creeps me out. I don't think I'm not trying to be judgmental about the skill of a 14-year-old, but I don't know that I think they're going to do a really great job, and I really don't want them thinking it's a great idea to, just add the juice for color to a cocktail or whatever. I think that's a terrible idea. Somebody who can't even ever have a drink themselves shouldn't be mixing mine.
Well, I don't think.
Furthermore, a bunch of drunk adults don't need to be sitting there with teenagers interacting with them in those moments. That's a recipe for all sorts of problems.
Oh, the sexual.
Where a bar fight breaks up, what the hell's a 14-year-old going to do?
Yeah.
There's so many disasters waiting to happen.
Oh, sexual assault is definitely on the list of that one for sure. I can foresee that. I've been to bars before with drunk guys, and it's like, you have a 14-year-old girl, she's basically a target at that point.
Could very easily become a victim.
14-year-old boy at certain bars is a target. It's just
absolutely.
So here's some of the lawmakers. So Madison, Wisconsin was one of them. They were trying to let children work more hazardous occupations, longer hours and nights. Expanded rules including serving alcohol in bars and restaurants as young as 14. Roll back labor rules. A ton of Republican lawmakers are doing this. This is actually from a think tank in Florida. Came up with a lot of this stuff. And this is to try and help the job shortage. And it's like, all right. But like everybody else, it's like child labor. I mean, there's a reason we have child labor laws in this country because children have been exploited for a long time up until we did that. Until the unions got those, right? Especially teen workers. Let's see. 10 states over the past 2 years. Let's see. Wisconsin, Ohio, Iowa currently. Driving up, let's see, employers have struggled to fill open positions after a spike in retirements, death, and illness. Bringing more children to the labor market is, of course, not the only way to solve the problem. Economists, as we brought up earlier, point to several of the strategies the country can employ. The most obvious is encouraging immigration. Ooh, heaven forbid. The whole country is built on immigrants. I don't know why we don't get more, right? But it's politically divisive because a lot of those immigrants are not white. Let's see. So, but yeah, that's how we've done it for years. Wisconsin lawmakers are backing a proposal to allow 14-year-olds to serve alcohol in bars and restaurants. If passed, Wisconsin would have the lowest such limit nationwide, according to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. Yeah, that sounds good. Arkansas, Huckabee Sanders signed a law in March eliminating permits that require employers to verify a child's age at their and their parents' consent. Wow, I didn't see that. But
14-year-old bartender. I mean, aren't you also sort of promoting teenage drinking on top of it in like a sideways way? You might not be saying it, but I have to say, you work in a restaurant or a bar and you get like a shift meal, a shift drink. Like these are things that you get.
Right.
And while somebody underage is not supposed to do that, you can't tell me that's not going to end up happening.
Well, that was my point. That was my point with the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. I mean, they're weighing in, going, "This is not good. You can't have children in that, right?" It's one thing. I mean, like if you want to argue like people in Europe, where it's like, okay, you can drink when you're 16 in some countries or 18, but it's like, yeah, but they're having a glass of wine with their parents at dinner. This is not a kid by themselves in a bar serving. It's a different
and liquor at that.
Yeah, it's a different scenario here.
I mean, how often have you been in a bar where the bartenders take shots with the clientele and whatnot? I mean, I'm even sometimes a little unsure of whether I think that's a good idea on adults, but let alone suddenly the line becomes super blurred because you've got 14-year-olds that get to do these jobs. That's a recipe for alcoholism, getting hurt in friggin' bar fights, being, sexual misconduct being directed toward children, all sorts of issues.
Well, here, let's see. Like I said, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, if you remember her, she used to be the White House correspondent for the president, Trump. Her big bill in Arkansas, she's the governor there now, eliminated permits that required employers to verify the child's age and the parents' consent. So I can hire a child without the parents' consent, without any validation or permit or anything. Oh man, it's just the children now working in these jobs that frankly they should be in school.
I agree.
Argue with me all you want.
Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is teenagers start getting a taste of money and they stop being interested in school at all because they're like, I'm making good money. What do I need this for? I'm not saying that's going to be all, but there's an extra danger there too, educationally, not just in falling behind because you're too tired and all of that, but there's also, sometimes the teenager starts seeing good money, all that tip money, and then they can start working, these different kinds of jobs. They start looking at their education like it's maybe less important.
Right, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but I've seen that trap. Not so much I had a lot of friends that dropped out of high school. I know people that did because they got decent jobs and they're like, well, I'm doing better than you. I'm making more money than you. And it's like, yeah, but where are you going to be 5 years from now? You don't really have any skills or education to advance. You're stuck in that position. Unless you go into business for yourself and you happen to be one of the, 10% that's successful. And even then, 10% that's successful just means they make money, right? Doesn't mean they're making a lot of money. And then, like when I was in college, I had that. I mean, I worked retail, and you didn't get tips or anything. I didn't make a ton of money, but I had full benefits, right? And it was enough to pay my bills for the most part at the time. I did that, and sometimes I worked as a janitor. But doing those jobs, I had friends that worked in restaurants, and like, well, I'm making this in tips and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to get stuck into that, because then you get stuck into that kind of nightlife with those people, right? And almost everybody I knew who worked at a bar or a restaurant dropped out of college because the money was good, and they were like, oh, I'm making great in tips and blah blah blah. And then you run into them 10 years later, and they're still doing the exact same thing, and they're shocked that you actually finished and have the career. And it's like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's, if they like doing their job, but I see getting stuck into that where it's tempting to get into that trap and that lifestyle. So no, you made a good point. I think when you're talking especially about young kids, they sit there and they, like you said, they only see the immediate paycheck. They don't see the long-term ramifications.
Right. They see the dollar signs right now.
Right.
And they don't have really a long view of that, their future, or even what that looks like when you have an adult set of bills.
Right. Yeah, they don't have a long-term plan. It's just short-term stuff. So anyway, still horrible that we're doing that. On the other side of the note, I wanted to talk. So Biden and McCarthy on the debt ceiling. So to move along here. So they did today. Actually, they came up with, I guess, a resolution. They're going to hopefully pass it Wednesday. We'll see. Because here's the deal. You can disagree with it, and to a degree, both sides disagree with it. But here's sort of the political concept that I've gotten from this, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But this is my understanding: is Biden's thought process on this, and at least their strategy was, look, we're going to have to go to this sort of budget negotiation anyway next year, right? So instead of him just arguing the debt ceiling, he said, let's just argue a 2-year budget negotiation now. And what he gave up was some pretty significant things, but nothing that he probably wouldn't have had to give up anyway. So they're going to add work requirements to food stamps and TANF and stuff like that for people. That's a bad idea, but from my understanding, that was probably going to happen next year anyway. However, they did figure out the cap was whatever, $4 trillion, which is pretty much what Biden wanted anyway. They did cap the military spending a little bit. You can only increase 1% a year starting next year under this new, but it's only for 2 years, right? So they did cap some of that. So at the end of the deal, the Republicans didn't really get anything out of this except for work requirements. They didn't get any cuts to anything, right? So a lot of the MAGA Republicans, right, are really pissed about this deal. And they don't have a big lead in the House right now. So if 5 or 6 of them break rank, they might not have a deal. And then it's kind of be on Biden to do something, and I don't know what he's going to do, but I would say now's the time to pull out the 14th Amendment and just be a dick. But we'll see what he does. I don't know what he's going to do, but we'll see. But here's the deal on the work requirements, which is so stupid. They did this in Arkansas, which is still Sarah Huckabee Sanders' state. And they did this years ago, and they studied it, and it didn't work out. And I'm going to show a little clip here, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail here in a second. But let me show you this, because this was 4 years ago.
New numbers just released by the Department of Human Services show of the 60,000 Arkansas Works recipients, 43,000 have met the new work requirement.
Very significantly, more than 1,000 Arkansas Works enrollees have found employment.
Governor Asa Hutchinson referring to those who signed up for job training through the Department of Workforce Services. While the governor calls that a success, he isn't exactly celebrating. In the last 3 months, more than 4,300 Arkansans failed to either report an exemption or comply. That means they will lose health care coverage for the rest of the year.
I don't like that number. I would like to see the number of those that are going into workforce services and moving to employment higher than the 1,000 plus that we recited.
One of the biggest critics of the policy, Hutchinson's Democratic opponent, Jared Henderson.
This is hurting patients. It can hurt their families.
Henderson held his own press conference just before the announcement. His main concern is how the program has been implemented, specifically the online reporting system, which he argues impacts Arkansans without access to a computer.
In my mind, it calls into question the motives of this policy. It's either stunningly bad, poorly designed, or it's meant to kick people off. One of those.
And he's right. That's what it was meant to do. There was nothing wrong. I mean, he was right. And so the whole, I think Asa Hutchinson, who was the former governor, him laughing about 1,000 people losing their health care. And he's sitting up there smiling. Well, I don't like that number. Ha, ha, ha. Those 1,000 people, most of them are going to be older people that don't have access to a computer, or poor people that don't have access to a computer, because to sign in and check in your work program status, you got to be able to log into a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The other thing about that is this. So they add the work requirements under the Biden thing. I think it's under 54. You have to show work requirements, right? And that's kind of their way around that. But the other thing about it is here's the deal. In order to have people prove that they've met the work requirements, what does that take? That takes you having an online system. That takes you having offices and staff that can monitor that. So now you're spending all this money, and what did we find out? Not that many people didn't qualify. They just couldn't get onto the system. And so here was an article that they did later on. This is Health Affairs, but they kind of showed this a little bit. So this is just the abstract. So in June 2018, Arkansas became the first U.S. state to implement work requirements in Medicaid, which is what we're talking about. Requiring adults aged 30 to 49 to work 20 hours a week, participate in community engagement, blah, 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 blah. By April 19, when the federal judge put the policy on hold, 18,000 adults had lost coverage. 18,000 people lost coverage because of this new policy. We analyzed the policy's effects before and after these events using a telephone survey performed in 2019 of 2,706 low-income adults in Arkansas and 3 control states that they compared with data from 2016 to 2018. We have 4 main findings. First, most of the Medicaid coverage losses in 2018 were reversed in 2019 after a court order. So the court had to reverse this stupid bill. All right. Second, work requirements did not increase employment over 18 months of follow-up. So it didn't increase employment, which was its goal. Third, people in Arkansas ages 30 to 49 who had lost Medicaid in the prior year experienced adverse consequences. 50% reported serious problems paying off medical debt. 56% delayed care because of cost, which means people are getting sicker or dying because they can't afford to go to the hospital. And 64% delayed taking medications because of cost. These rates were significantly higher than among Arkansans who remained in Medicaid all year. Finally, awareness of the work requirements remained poor, with more than 70% of Arkansans unsure whether the policy was in effect. So people didn't even know that they had to do this. So now they're adding another thing. You got to pay for a lot of advertising to make sure the population knows they got to do this. That means TV, billboards, constant, on all channels.
Yeah.
Yep. Not just on the local channels. You have to put it on cable. Millions and millions and millions of dollars in advertising to make sure this works. I mean, this is so stupid. I mean, I get Biden agreed to it, but it's such a stupid thing to agree to. I mean, he didn't have a lot of other choices, but that's just what it is. So, anyway, that was that. I mean, um, we got one more news story. So, Florida, Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis finally announced he's running for president. Woo! That was about the fanfare he got.
Right.
Uh,
Oh my God.
so he's done that. So he did it. His announcement was on. It was an audio thing he did on Twitter with Elon Musk, and it failed like a couple times through the thing. So his announcement failed. So you launch the ship, right? You're showing the fanfare. It doesn't really do great when the ship goes to ground a couple times as it's trying to get out of port, which is kind of what happened. And then, of course, he does it. And what happens? So he's got his big war with Disney World, and tourism is down. And like we mentioned earlier, a lot of that, he passed that draconian immigration law. So all these immigrants aren't going to work. So their economy's in the toilet. Tourism's in the toilet. Everything's in the toilet. They've got all these draconian laws against transgender people and blah, 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 blah. And just to cap it off, the NAACP issues a travel warning against Florida. I am not kidding you. I've never heard of this before, but it's awesome.
This is the craziest thing. Oh my gosh.
NAACP has issued a travel advisory for Florida just days before the Memorial Day holiday weekend. Controversial new laws have led the group to claim that Black lives are, quote, not valued here. Local 10's Glenna Milberg is live with reactions. Glenna.
Nicole, we already met visitors who are here from Memorial Day. These stanchions for the weekend were brought in just a few hours ago. A lot of people really haven't heard about this travel advisory just yet, but businesses have, and they are bracing. And from Black-owned businesses, the reaction is a bit more complicated. At historic Dunn's Josephine Hotel in Overtown, African-American history is baked into the experience that culturally diverse clientele come for.
I support it. I really do. I think that, we have to make a stand as African Americans about our history.
Owner Kristen Kitchen gives voice to Black business owners who both support the NAACP travel advisory and may also face its effects.
If there is an economic impact to us, we need to make those kinds of sacrifices in order to make change.
The advisory is right there on the front page of the NAACP website and details the protest over new state laws it calls anti-civil rights, like restrictions on African American history lessons and roadblocks on diversity and equity training, fingers pointed squarely at the governor. Is business worried? The Florida Chamber of Commerce had no comment on the advisory, but wrote, Florida moved to number 1 in the U.S. for Black-owned businesses.
We would implore them to...
Yeah, sure. We're number 1 for Black-owned businesses, but we have no comment about the NAACP. We're number 1 for Black-owned businesses, but we don't want to comment on the NAACP. We love Black people. We just don't want to talk about the NAACP. I love elderly people, but keep the AARP the fuck away from me.
Honestly, this is pretty wild. So spring break plans next year, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe not Florida. Maybe not Florida.
Portland's nice.
Portland's nice. If you really need some sunshine, give a little love to Southern California instead of Florida, maybe. I don't know.
Waikiki is always nice. I lived in Honolulu. It's nice there. They'll take your money. They'll happily take your money with a smile.
Nice little Arizona resort. I don't know.
Yeah, Montana. I mean, New York, see some sights. I mean, come on, man. But man, ouch, I feel bad. I mean, especially for like that woman. I mean, she's got that gorgeous hotel in Miami, and fucking local officials are screwing up her business. She's got to sit there and go, well, yeah, they're being racist, so I got to support the NAACP, but this sucks. So
I mean, we'll talk
I
about
feel
a
bad
rock
for
and a
her.
hard place. Like there's kind of a rock and a hard place moment there in play for a lot of business owners for sure.
Yeah. I still think it's a badass argument for her to make and sit there and go, look, yeah, I got to suffer it. I'd rather suffer it than be on the wrong side of civil rights, man. You kind of got to get, yeah.
You got to respect her for that, and I completely agree and respect her for it. I just also recognize it's got her between a rock and a hard place, and she's going with her moral compass more than her wallet.
Yeah.
But there's obviously there's an element of concern over her wallet too.
Yeah. Well, DeSantis is kind of a punk and he's a wuss. So just to have fun, he's decided to run for president. Trump has already issued an attack ad, and we're going to watch a little bit of this on the Majority Report, and they're going to make fun of it. So it's Sam Cedar.
I can't wait.
Yeah, Sam Cedar and Emma Vigilant. We're going to let them rip into him, and we're just gonna go along for the ride a little bit here. Let's see if we can just skip to it a little bit, because he takes a while sometimes to get into this stuff. So here we go.
Yeah, start with this.
If you live in Oregon, you could
I gotta click
lower
this.
your electric bill to less than $30 a month. How?
Yeah, tell us how.
DeSantis, when he looks over at his opponent, they're really keyed in, the Trump folks, in a way that the DeSantis people are not.
DeSantis was struggling big time in his primary race for governor of Florida. Polls revealed DeSantis was failing so bad, he was losing by a staggering 17 points. Then DeSantis was saved by the endorsement of President Trump. Trump's support was so powerful, just days after the endorsement.
Oh, pause it right there. Wait. Go back. Because Trump said, get a shot of DeSantis that
where
looks
he looks
fatter than me. And here it is.
That's a good point. He does. You see that?
Yeah.
He does look fatter than Trump in that photo.
Yeah, he does.
Even though he's a lot smaller than Trump.
Yeah, get him busting out of his suit jacket.
Yeah, there we go.
DeSantis took a commanding lead that propelled him to being elected governor.
I'd like to thank our president for standing by me when it wasn't necessarily the smart thing to do.
You're welcome, Ron. Unfortunately, instead of being grateful, DeSantis is now attacking the very man who saved his career. Isn't it time DeSantis remembers how he got to where he is?
Make America great again. Build the wall. Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
The truth is, there's only one person who can make America great again.
That's so great. They got him sucking up.
Okay, honestly, it sounds like Donald Trump wrote that script himself. Like, some of those phrases in the beginning sound exactly like the kind of things that he says.
Oh yeah, he's ungrateful. He doesn't appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's what it was. But he had writers do all that. But still, it's perfect. I mean, you got him doing it.
Writers that are his speech writers, though, too. Honestly.
Yeah, but you got his old governor ad where he's reading The Art of the Deal to my infant son. Oh, see, Trump's the greatest. Let's build the wall together, honey. Suck it up to him. At this point, with these pissed off Disney and man, it was he's creeped out. I mean, he kind of like, God, I kind of want Disney to do a cartoon with Mickey Mouse, where Mickey Mouse just slaps Donald Trump's dick out of Ron DeSantis' mouth. I just want to see that. Hey, Ron!
I think that building the wall with the little kid part of that ad makes both Trump and DeSantis look pretty wackadoo.
Oh.
I mean, they both look crazy in that.
No, but
it's DeSantis looks crazy doing that with his little kid, but Trump looks crazy because it's his friggin' policy.
Yeah. Well, but that's just Trump, man. It's just, but it plays to his base, and honestly, DeSantis doesn't really have much of a base. I think he's just trying to play to Trump's base. I don't know what else he's going to do. What's he going to do? Play to the normal Republicans? He's attacking fucking Disney, one of the biggest corporations in America, over what? Over they don't like his "Don't Say Gay" bill.
I mean, yeah. So what's he going to do? Essentially, just
you're attacking
divide Republican Party or divide the Trump portion of the Republican Party.
Oh yeah,
split them off a bit. I don't know.
That's all that's going to happen. I don't personally, and this is just my guess. I see probably Trump's going to win the primary, but he's not going to have anybody left but his base, and Biden's going to smoke him, and it's going to be even more embarrassing than it was the first time. I mean, you got to remember, Trump didn't even win against Hillary. He lost the popular vote. He barely won the Electoral College.
Right.
The guy's never won a popular vote. So, I mean, it tells you something when, the last two Republican presidents we had both lost the popular vote about where they're at and why they don't want, more people voting.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to talk a little bit today about income and wealth inequality, or the difference between the two of them, but I wanted to look at it more from sort of the microcosm level, how it affects individual people, right? And to do that, we're going to have to look at some of these bad arguments that are made about it. And unfortunately, we got to start with the Money Guys show. Now, generally, we like these guys. Don't get us wrong, but they do tend to lean on the sort of conservative bias where it doesn't always come across real great. So here's just a quick example. They're going to talk about why is it that the people today are broke, right? Why are Americans actually broke?
Okay, I'm going to just put it out there for our audience. Even literally just that phrasing immediately makes me a little bit anxious because I can just feel what's coming. So Here we go.
Here we go. We're gonna
this
jump.
is gonna make me crazy.
We're gonna jump in. We're gonna skip through a little bit because it's a long video, but I'm not gonna go through the whole thing. But I just want to get to their main point.
Wondered why Americans are broke and what you can do to make sure you're on the right side of wealth building?
See, what you can do is listen to what we say and buy our products. That's the ultimate throw here, but let's hear them out a little bit.
We're loaded. I mean, if you look at GDP standards, America is the land of opportunity, land of riches. We are from comparison of all the other countries, our GDP makes us the wealthiest country on the planet. However, there's a big but. However, if you look at savings rates of Americans, we stink. Yeah, check this.
Okay, so let's get into that real quick. They're right. GDP. We're big. We're the powerhouse.
Okay, I'm hoping it gets better when we listen a little bit further, but I immediately feel irritated because they're saying savings rates. Okay, yes, this is true. You can go to so much data that shows how low our savings rates have been over lots of spans of time. We could look at decades even. Our savings rates are not great. But I think we kind of have to pull the string a little bit further. Why are Americans not saving money?
That's
what's going on that's making Americans not save money? We're not just inept. Why?
Could it be
what's happening?
Could it be we're not making enough money? Could it be we have more expenses than people in other countries?
Is it that our student loans have been blown up so far that that's eating into the savings that decades ago people could potentially have saved? Is it that
medical debt?
rent and if you buy a house, mortgage prices are so much higher, that the payments are so much higher, but the wages haven't gone up as quickly as these expenses have been, even down to small expenses, down to walking in the grocery store, small expenses. It does not even just the large ones.
Could
right?
it be the
How much does it cost to buy a car?
Yeah, could it be the cost of medical care and the fact that we don't have universal health care, and we're the only developed country that doesn't? We're also one of the, like you said, college. We're the only developed, one of the only developed countries that doesn't have cheap or free college.
So, right, we can point the finger and say, well, it's because Americans aren't saving enough. But I sure hope they're going to possibly address the idea that there are systematic problems that are making it really difficult to save. I mean, we still have to do what we can.
Sure.
But we might need to recognize maybe it's the system is stacked in a way to where we're literally not capable of doing as much as somebody 50 years ago or however many decades ago.
Right. You have to remember, though, these guys, they're not talking to the average American. They're talking to the top 30% that can save. So, no, their solution is not going to be there's systematic problems that we need to deal with. It's going to be, this is how you can save more with our program and make more money. But it doesn't apply to the vast majority of people. That's the problem that we're going to get into here. That's why I always get stuck with these guys, because, you know, I get it. You're a financial planner. You have to target your audience, but
this out. This is a detail of the top 10 countries by savings rate relative to their GDP, their gross domestic product. And what you'll notice, okay, so see if you can find the United States.
Yeah, it's not on there, buddy. Anyway, so let's go, skip ahead to this next thing.
And again, how you can combat it, how you can fight against it.
So let's jump right into these. Number one, I thought this was quite interesting. Our retirement accounts are quite leaky.
Yeah, when you think about retirement accounts, the way that retirement systems are set up in other countries across the world, they make it very difficult to get to your retirement dollars, very hard to access those dollars that are supposed to be saved for the future. However, here in America, we make it a little bit easier to get to.
Now, why?
And expensive.
It's expensive.
We do make it easier to get to, and we make it, people pay out the nose in order to do so. So we make it possible, and then we charge them a whole bunch to do it.
Yeah, but why do we do it that way? Because we've had to deal with problems like pandemics and things like that, and the recession and all that, and we don't have a safety net set up like most of these other countries in Europe or Asia. So what ends up happening is people are broke. They have to access that money because they can't get it anywhere else. So then we set it up that way. Okay, well, we'll let you get it, but we're going to make it really difficult. That way it'll discourage people from taking it. Not realizing, no, they're desperate. They're going to take it. Not because they want to, because they have to. So they've missed, I mean, once again, they've missed the bigger picture here. So to sit there and go, well, no, we need to make it so you can't ever touch your retirement money until you're retired. It's like, well, that sounds all well and good, but what if these people need it for medical costs? What if these people need it for mortgages? What if these people are out of work? They have no safety net. They have no protection. And that money's sitting there and they can't touch it. Well, now they're really screwed. I'm sorry, it's hard to save for retirement if you're unemployed and you lose your house. Then you're homeless. So, I mean, so they're missing all this. Because remember, we're not talking to the average American. We're talking to the top 20, 30% of Americans, the high income earners. That's what they're talking to. But that's the problem they're missing. They never specify. And that's what bugs me about this video. Is because if you aren't one of those people and you're the average American listening to this, you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, this is all on me. I should be able to do all this. And the reality is you might not be able to circumstantially. And then you get really fucked because you try and do this and you don't have the money. That's what bugs me about this whole thing. We'll go through a little bit more of this and then we'll jump into the reasons here.
When this came up in the content meeting, I had a double take. I was like, wait a minute, say what? Because according to the research we found from The Atlantic, 40 cents out of every dollar that goes into retirement accounts actually leaks out before people reach retirement. That's right. 40 cents out of every dollar is actually being distributed before people actually reach retirement.
Yeah, this is specifically referring to 401k plans, but
Yeah, and I want to get into that because that's where it is. And they're right. It's about 40 cents. But once again, we just went over why. Because these
guys do a terrible job at the pulling the string on the why.
Yeah.
They want to point to the surface level of the problem and not dig any further.
Right.
Because when we're analyzing any of these problems, at least my perspective is we kind of have to look at sort of two separate parts of it. Which parts of it are systematic that need to be changed on a much larger scale because it's stacking the cards against everybody? And which parts of it are the part that we can just actively do ourselves within our own situation? Because it's usually like a two-pronged thing. It's not just one size. And they only really want to look at it from the angle of personal responsibility,
right.
which is sort of a surface level sort of situation. You know?
That's part of it, but the thing that you hit it. I mean, first we have to start out with what do you want, right? What are you willing to do to get it? That's the personal responsibility portion, right? But the bigger issue when we're actually creating a financial plan is what is your circumstance currently? Because that's what we have to build from, right? I can't make bricks without clay, right? So I have to use what's available. And that's what they're ignoring. Because if you start to pay attention to that on the larger level, your 5-step or what's their 7-step, I don't know what it is, financial plan goes to complete shit. Because circumstantially it doesn't apply to a lot of people. So you can't sell your cookie cutter plan anymore because it doesn't work. Because I have to assume you have $2,000 extra a month to save. Or whatever it is. And if you don't, well, I mean, I can't sit there and sell that on my show. I got to sell that anybody can do it. Right? So it's a little shady, and it bums me out that they're CFPs. But yeah, so here's the deal. So here's CNBC did a story back in wherever this was, 2015, about tapping into your 401k early. And they talked about this a little bit too. And they talked about the penalties and whatnot. But so
Duncan, help me out. Close their ad. It's making me crazy.
Which one? This one here?
The bottom one, the green banner across it.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
I don't care what deal they're offering. Okay.
Okay.
Let's go.
So Center for Retirement Research did a white paper. Center for Retirement Research at Boston College estimates that 1.5% of assets leak out of 401ks and IRAs each year, on average, through early withdrawals, cash outs alone. Many are a result of job loss or job change. An estimated 3 in 10 who leave their jobs cash out their accounts, and that's according to Vanguard, who's a big finance company, or an unexpected healthcare expense. So job loss, job change, healthcare expense. And then they talk about, well, doing that can do the temporary relief, but the long-term effects are costly because that money's not earning money for you in the retirement. But it misses, once again, the point, which is these people are pulling out because they need it. They need money to pay their bills.
You mean they're not just trying to go and buy a boat?
No. They're not being careless. This is, I lost my job. I have a medical expense. I've changed jobs for whatever reason. Right? So when you experience a job loss or an emergency need for cash, it can be tempting to withdraw funds from the retirement account, and there may soon be an opportunity for those who've been unemployed for a while to do so without penalty, which is part of what Obama passed. And if you have a financial planner or whatnot, you can go through that. But there are, if you have medical reasons, first-time home purchases, you can take it out without some penalty, education costs. But the bottom line is over the time, you lose the growth on that money, and that's where it kills you. And that's kind of the point they're making. But at the end of the day, it's like you still got to look at it from the situation. So if I have a client who it's like, okay, I just lost my job, right? I can't afford to pay my bills, right? Where can I get that money from? Well, you can borrow it from your retirement plan, right? This is what it's going to cost you. This is what your total loss is going to be over the time. But you could do that and pay it off. But at least it gets you through the next couple months until you can get back on your feet. Now, are they going to sit there and go, well, you know what? Gosh, I'm going to lose that money for future retirement, but I need it now, but I don't want to lose it. So you know what? I'm just gonna lose my apartment or my house and go underwater or try to sell it and not take the money out of my retirement. And I'll just be homeless for a few months. That's not a reasonable position. You can't expect that, right? Because it's like, how are you going to get another job if you don't have a freaking address or a phone?
And quite frankly, when you're that low on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're not really worrying so much about retirement. You're worrying about those
am I going to
those base levels, those base, roof over my head, food in my belly, safety. Like those are the things you're worrying about, not these other things.
Right? Can I keep my kids in school? Can I feed them? Right? So it's not a practical thing to sit there and go, well, the problem is you're just not saving enough. Well, it's like sometimes you're in a position where you gotta bleed. It's not good. It sucks. But wouldn't it be nice to be in a situation where we had some of these safety nets so you didn't have to do that? Right? So that was kind of their spiel, but that's how they market their stuff. And that's how a lot of these guys do it. It's if you're not rich, you're an idiot kind of thing. They don't say it like that, but that's kind of what they're doing. And it's this whole, we're just going to ignore that you might have a circumstance that requires this. We're just going to say, well, that was stupid of you to do it. Was it the best option? No. Was it probably your only option? Yeah. So that was just that. But here's the big one. So when we talk about these things like, well, gee, cheaper college, healthcare, better safety net for food, employment, things like that. One of the big countries that has done all these things is the Netherlands, right? Now, the Netherlands did this, and what ends up happening is the Netherlands has one of the biggest wealth inequality gaps. Or I think it's the biggest of any country in the world. So their whole argument on the counter side is, well, look, you did all these social programs, these sort of socialist things, right? And Netherlands is sort of a liberal sort of bastion in that kind of sense. But it didn't fix the wealth gap. They still have the biggest wealth gap of any nation. But let's look at that for a second, because I want to look at this real quick. So here's a little bit on that. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but we'll just get into it a little bit.
Netherlands, a picturesque nation filled with windmills, tulip fields, and coffee shops. The nation is looked to by many as an extremely forward-thinking place that practices some pretty progressive policies. The nation has an incredibly strong social security system with universal health care, robust retirement pensions, as well as allowances for maternity leave. And these kinds of policies are mirrored in other areas as well. The nation is home to some relatively high tax rates, and the protections for employees are very strong, almost to the point that people joke it's impossible to be fired in the Netherlands. So, this kind of looks like a liberal paradise, right? Well, it would be if it were not hiding a dirty little secret. This postcard-perfect little nation is, according to the World Bank, the most unequal place on Earth, and the extent of the inequality is simply staggering.
So that's not entirely true. It has the most unequal wealth gap, but what it doesn't have is the most unequal income inequality gap. So income equality is actually very low in the Netherlands. And here's a study real quick where who is this? Berkeley? Their economics department. So high tax rates for the wealthy. She's talking about the Dutch economy of the Netherlands. High tax rates for the wealthy and increased government spending are increasingly being seen by the vocal majority as clear-cut solutions for wealth inequality within the country. Phrases like "eat the rich" have been circulating on social media, blah, blah, blah. But she goes into this. The Netherlands is often credited as some of the most modern and forward-thinking economies in the world. In fact, many progressive policies like high tax rates, high government spending are being proposed to the U.S. as commonplace from the Netherlands. The Netherlands has income tax could reach up to 49.5%. Blah, blah, blah. Some characteristics. So she goes into this. So this thing is called the Gini Index, Gini, and that figures the wealth gap and income inequality gap disparities, right? So when she talks about, so the Dutch economy is regarded as a liberal paradise, blah, 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 progressive policy, but the Gini coefficient is 0.9. So 0 to 1 is the Gini index, 0 to 1, 1 being the worst gap, 0 being the best, right? So 0.9 is super high. Okay. But what you have to understand is the history of the Netherlands. Because back during the War of the Roses and the Renaissance, there was this little thing called the Dutch East India Trading Company. And they traded spices, silk, all this stuff all over the world. And it was one of the first companies in the world to offer shares. So you could invest in the company. So the people in the Netherlands who invested in it are all incredibly rich today. Their families are incredibly rich. And they've just gotten richer and richer on their investments. Even though they make about the same as everybody else, their investments have made them richer and richer and richer. So to sit there and go, well, look, yeah, taxes haven't fixed this. Well, income taxes fix the income disparity quite a bit. But it didn't fix the wealth disparity. Well, what could fix that? Oh, I don't know, wealth taxes? If it worked with income tax, why wouldn't it work with wealth? So their argument is, well, income taxes didn't fix the wealth disparity. And I'm like, yeah, because they weren't supposed to.
Right.
That's not what they're designed to do. They would fix the income disparity. And so, yeah, they have a Gini coefficient of 0.9 on that. Where was it? So the Netherlands income inequality, the top 20% of people in the Netherlands, the highest earners, earns 4 times the income of the bottom 20%. Okay? Take the US. The top 20% in the US earn 16.65 times the bottom 20%. So our income disparity is a lot higher. Our wealth disparity isn't as high because you know why? We haven't been around since the Renaissance. We didn't have any of that. So it's only been the last 2 centuries you could build wealth in this country for these families. But now that gap is getting larger and larger in this country. Why? Because they can earn more income. And wage gap,
Right.
and the wage gap has gotten bigger and bigger as wages have gotten stifled. Now, if you put in higher income taxes now, we could prevent that and prevent a lot of the wealth gap growth. Because most people in America that are getting that higher wealth gap are getting it through income. As opposed to the Netherlands, where by the time they implemented it, those people were already filthy rich. So unless you take their money from them, it doesn't change anything. So it's one of those where it's like they like to throw that argument out there, but they're conflating wealth and income. You can be poor and make a huge income, and eventually you'll be fairly rich. You can be incredibly wealthy and make no income, and you'll always be incredibly wealthy. They're different things. They're different issues.
Right. And they're being lumped together in a way that's not completely appropriate. That doesn't totally make sense.
Right. Right. So let's see. So let me do this. Is it in here? Or is it just this one? Hang on 1 second. Yeah, this is just the wealth gap with the Gini index. This is just Wikipedia. I'm just making it easy. Let's see if we can get that going. All right, here we go. So as you can see from this chart, at the top is the Netherlands, right? At 2019, it's what was it? 0.902. Russia, Sweden, right? The United States, right? But as you go down and down and down, I mean, you got to look at some of the history of some of these countries, right? So like South Africa is always really high. Let's see if we can go down and find something. A lot of these are undeveloped countries, so there's not a ton yet. You know, Greece is really low because they've had a lot of redistribution of wealth. Japan is really low, and part of the reason Japan's really low is because after World War II, we distributed the United States and the Allies. We redistributed a lot of the wealth in Japan after World War II. So it changes depending on what when you're looking at what the history is. Like France is still fairly low. Why? Because during the French Revolution, what did they do? They killed most of the rich people and distributed the wealth. Right? Remember the guillotines?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. I mean, so when you're talking about the wealth index, you got to go back centuries. You can't sit there and go, well, you had these policies last year, therefore they didn't work. Well, no, you got to go back a couple hundred years. You know, in the case of like the Netherlands and Switzerland and those places, you got to go back 500 years, back when they had royalty. So anyway, I just think that was just a funny argument that you see all the time, and it's just kind of ridiculous, where they're trying to make this point of
not looking at why.
Yeah. Well, and it's
have you noticed a pattern to all of these things? It's just wanting to make a blanket statement on the surface level of some data, but not asking why or how
right
we got the data.
Right. Well, the bigger thing is it's a solution in search of a problem instead of a problem in search of a solution. It's completely backwards from how we're taught to think. We follow the evidence to a conclusion. These people have a conclusion and they're trying to make the evidence fit. See, income taxes don't help wealth inequality. Yeah, they're not supposed to. You didn't solve the problem and you didn't disprove my argument. Wealth taxes could potentially help wealth inequality. Right? But to sit there and go, well, see, the income taxes didn't work in the Netherlands. It's like, yeah, they did, because their income tax Gini index is like 0.2.
Right.
It did work. It worked gangbusters. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It just because it's like okay, I repaired your carburetor, and it's like great, but you know, the air conditioning's not working. I'm like, well, you didn't pay me to fix the air conditioning, bro.
You weren't even trying to.
Right. I just fixed the one thing.
Right.
So you can't sit here and bitch but that's what they're trying to do with this argument. So to illustrate your point even more, here's Dave Ramsey, our favorite, with Jordan Peterson, who is currently fighting to keep his PhD and his medical licenses for all the horrible things he said against trans people and women over the last few years. And they're going to talk about just how stupid people are. People are so stupid.
Oh my.
Yep. They should be rich, but they're stupid. Yep. And Jordan Peterson's going to make the exact mistake you pointed out.
One of the things we say around Ramsey all the time is personal finance is 80% behavior. It's only 20% head knowledge, and getting the guy in the mirror to behave is the battle. And you've got a lot to say on that subject. So talk about what you've discovered around the correlation between just a mental stability, a mental maturity, mental health maturity, and that how that correlates to wealth.
Well, it's easy to presume that the reason people are poor is because they don't have enough money. But that's an oversimplification. Very few complex things are attributable to a single cause. I had lots of clients who were much better off when they had no money at all. Those were often people who had addiction problems, because as soon as they had any money at all, they're just in the bar and into the cocaine until...
So there you go. Jesus.
Oh my God. So people are poor because they do too much cocaine? Is like, seriously? They drink too much and do too much cocaine. Did you know that that's why people are poor?
I'm sure some people.
Okay,
but
let's pause here.
All right.
I'm going to start this by saying I have never purchased cocaine before, nor have I even tried. But rumor has it, it's a pretty freaking expensive habit. So I guess, yes, if you're doing it, you might not have a bunch of money, but you got to have some money in the first place to be doing that. So to say poor people are all doing cocaine doesn't even make any sense.
Well,
not even on that level.
Well, furthermore, here's the question. So he's talking about mentality, maturity, that kind of stuff. And what does Peterson say? Well, you can't say that it's because poor people don't have money. That's an oversimplification. Well, statistically, it's not. Statistically speaking, if they had more resources, they wouldn't have as many problems. Now, is that true of everybody? No. If you have a serious alcoholic or a serious drug addict, well, we've got different problems. The problem isn't they're irresponsible. The problem is they have an addiction. They're suffering from a disease. They need help. Right? The issue is not that they're irresponsible. Right?
And that's taking one very specific problem and making a really broad statement.
Right.
Like, he's making it sound like you could find some data, which I have not looked for, find some data that suggests that most people are poor because they're addicts of some sort. Like, I've never seen anything that says that people are poor because most of them are addicts.
No. And that's not true.
That just sounds crazy. That doesn't even make any sense.
That's not true, because you can be wealthy and an addict. You know, it's the old Chris Rock joke where he did the what was it, like Kobe Bryant, right? The basketball player. He's like, Kobe Bryant's rich, right? That can be destroyed by a bad marriage or a drug addiction or him doing something really stupid. But the guy that writes Kobe Bryant's paycheck, that guy's wealthy. Doesn't matter what that guy does, he's always going to be wealthy. He could be snorting cocaine all day, every day, while shooting heroin, while murdering hookers on his yacht, and he'll be fucking wealthy no matter what. Even if he's in prison, he'll be wealthy. That's what they're missing here. So to sit there and go, not having money is what makes people poor is an oversimplification. Well, having money is what makes people wealthy. And there are a lot of people who are wealthy that are doing all kinds of stupid shit all the time, who've never worked a day in their life. So your reverse is even wrong, right? On top of the fact, you're ignoring this, some of it is circumstance. Yeah, I mean, if I have an addiction problem and I can't get help, then that's going to be an issue. They're going to get in the way with everything. Period. That's just how it goes. So you got to deal with that issue, right? You got to deal with the circumstance first. So that's the problem. He's ignoring the circumstance and going right to it's all on you to get past your circumstance. But watch, he'll walk it back when he thinks about it later on. Because you can't get around that. You have to factor in your circumstance. You can't make a plan unless you factor in your circumstance. You know, it's just, I mean, this is how muddled this guy's thinking is. He just has no.
So they were face down in a ditch, and so there's all sorts of causes of poverty, and certainly one form of poverty and one cause of poverty is absence of a plan. I mean, you need to develop a vision for your life, and that makes delaying gratification, for example, and not engaging in impulsive momentary pleasure worthwhile, because you're building towards something that you actually want to attain.
Okay. So that's their whole solution. You just have to deny yourself any sort of pleasure or gratification until your plan comes to fruition, whatever that plan is. We're not going to talk to you about how to develop a plan. We're not going to get into that. That's too complicated. But we're going to skip forward a little bit because he goes into this whole thing. So he does this spiel where he's talking about he had a bunch of young guys in college, and he did a study. This is, according to him, his study. I wanted to put a flag in this. So flag and circumstances don't really matter. Flag in this. Dr. Jordan Peterson, this is his study where he had a bunch of college kids, and what they did was they wrote down what their goals were. And those kids were 97% more effective or something ridiculous. He's going to talk about this study he did.
Vision. And one of the things we ask people to do is just to sit for 15 minutes, write for 15 minutes. Badly, here's the game. Imagine you were taking care of yourself like someone you cared for. So imagine someone you care for and pretend that's you. Maybe it's a son or a daughter or a friend. Now imagine 5 years down the road. You can have what you want and need. You can be who you are, but you have to figure out what it is. What is it? What do you want? What do you need? And don't worry about getting it right. Just get it down for 15 minutes. That's a good start. The whole exercise you can do in about 90 minutes, but we had students do that, say, before they went to university. And just doing it for 90 minutes, developing that vision, dropped their dropout rate 90 or 50%, 50%, and increased their grade point average 35%. And that just shows you how badly it had been done before, because students went to university with no vision. They have no idea what they were doing there. And so, of course...
So that was his point. Is so if... And look, I'm all for teaching more life skills in high school. Don't get me wrong. But they're not proposing that, because that would cost a shit ton of money. I'd pay more taxes for it. I really would. So these kids had more life skills. But that's not what he's proposing. He's proposing just have them get a plan and a goal, right? And we'll do that before they start school. And then those kids are just way more successful. Their grade points go up. They're more likely to graduate. Well, that's all well and good. Except for... Give me 1 second.
I mean, is anybody really saying that a plan and a goal is not good?
No.
I mean, I think they're being short-sighted in that they're failing to address and look at other things. But
no, having a plan is good.
It's like saying having a plan and a goal is good, and is anyone on the planet being like, no, it's terrible to have a plan and a goal?
No, but
they're not making an argument for anything really here.
No, but you're a financial coach, right? I'm a financial advisor. Yeah, you can have a plan, but you know what you have to do? You have to go back and review the plan over and over and over. You can't ever stop.
And you have to keep refining it as your circumstances keep changing.
Exactly, right?
You have to keep adapting. Mm-hmm. Maybe sometimes you around it, depending on, right?
Right. So here's an article from Cell Skills. And what are they talking about? Writing versus thinking about your goals, which makes you more successful. Making goals and putting them to writing. Yes, the old-fashioned way. Get out a pen and a piece of paper and have your students get all their dreams out. They can be short-term or long-term. They can be small, outrageous. Either way, it will make a world of difference for your students as a teacher, right? Doing it regularly. You may have heard of a famous study on goal setting done on Harvard MBA students. The study claimed that 3% of students with written down goals had been 10 times more successful, measured by income, than 90% of their peers who had not written them down. This claim is a bit outrageous and obviously an urban myth. This study never happened. So he just lied to you. He didn't invent the study, and the study isn't real. He read an urban myth somewhere, and he's passing it off as his own. No wonder his PhD is in jeopardy. I mean, could you? We have graduate degrees. Can you imagine saying something like that?
Right? I would never in a million years dream of pretending something was a study that I did. You know, I offer anecdotes based on my observations, but I don't try to pretend that they've got any sort of, you know, quantifiable data behind them when they don't.
Right. No, we don't. When we present data, we present data. We present other sources. He's just making shit up and saying, well, if you just do this. Why? Because it backs, once again, it's a solution looking for a problem. The problem is you're just not focused on your goals. So if you just wrote them down when you were a senior in high school, you'd be more successful. See? Easy, done. That way we don't need to acknowledge circumstance. We don't need to acknowledge problems with the economy. We don't need to acknowledge problems with the system. That's the whole beauty of this. There's nothing we can do other than yell at these kids and tell them that they're lazy. That's all we can do. Which is his whole point. Which is Dave's whole point. Which is why they're doing this whole thing. But watch, he'll fuck it up here in a second. We'll watch it till he does.
First, half of them didn't succeed because they had no idea why they were doing anything. Well, that's not helpful or wise. And the reason that's the case, by the way, is because our school system was set up to produce mindless, obedient workers essentially by fascists at the end of the 1800s. And that's well documented historically. It was based on the Prussian military model, and they wanted to produce obedient soldiers. And we haven't updated our notion of what schools are for.
Okay, and that's partly true and partly a lie. Yes, it was set up. I forget what the Prussian's name was. Yeah, but he set up the Frederick, of course, who was a big despot at the time. Anyway, he set up the first sort of universal public school system. So it was government funded. It was mandatory, right? But he really focused on, the basic sciences and technologies at the time, which were really basic: English, mathematics. And yeah, it was kind of designed to make them more obedient to a degree. It's the same reason we do the Pledge of Allegiance now. Same kind of thing. They used to have to do that to Frederick all the time. But that was the model that most people took and used. But it's changed dramatically over the years, where now we have social studies, and especially in a lot of the more democratic countries, we have things like universities that teach you things like how to think about things, how to question the government, how to question bills, how to think. There's been a lot of philosophy writers since then who've questioned a lot of this. So this idea that, no, it hasn't changed, yeah, it has quite a bit. Just because the original model was built by a despot doesn't mean it's all bad now. We've added some stuff and taken some shit out. Nobody has to salute Frederick anymore. I don't think any kid in high school knows what Frederick is. And they'd be like, think so. Is that the kid with the locker 2 down from mine who smells like cheese? That Frederick?
For 140 years.
Yeah. Ken Coleman says we've not made pathfinders, we've made test takers.
If that. We're not even very good at that.
Well, Dr. Peterson, I'm curious. We have so many similar principles. We want to help people avoid the pitfalls of education and debt.
And we're both kind of truth tellers in a world gone mad, and that can be countercultural, controversial, offensive at times. What is the secret sauce to really connecting with those people and getting to change a paradigm and actually getting out of debt or doing that?
Oh, see, I fucking love it. We're the truth tellers. We're the geniuses. What's the secret sauce? What's the one thing that'll fix your whole life? Because it's just one thing, Lacey.
Well, I don't know. I bet dollars to donuts is personal responsibility.
Yep, you gotta be personally responsible.
That hard thing.
Well, I think a huge part of that is to get them to start conceptualizing themselves as people who could be pursuing a goal that they found compelling rather than people who are driven by circumstances. I think it's 35-40% of young Americans now feel they have no agency in their life. And you say, well, how do you have to entice people into, I suppose, the hypothesis of a vision. And you do that with, well, this meditative exercise, for example, that I described. Just imagine for a moment that you could have what you needed and wanted. And I mean, literally imagine that. Daydream, like you did when you were a kid. Now, you want to bind that with a little bit of intelligent rationality. You don't want to be, if you're starting it from scratch, maybe you don't want to be thinking that in 5 years you're going to inhabit a 350-room mansion.
Oh, what, Dr. Peterson? What? Imagine, but be realistic? What? Come on, spit it out. Spit it out.
Stranger things have happened to people. You want to develop your vision within the realm of possibility.
Within the realm of possibility. Within the realm.
Wait, are there things out there making it less possible, Duncan?
Could it be that? Well, I mean, I imagine myself in a mansion, in a $350 million mansion. I imagine it. It should be possible. I should be able to do it in 4 or 5 years, right? That's what he was saying. My circumstances shouldn't prevent that at all.
As long as you take personal responsibility, there's nothing in the outside world that could be an obstacle.
Yeah. I mean, why is it that I don't have the all-time home run record? I can imagine it.
Listen, I don't want to say there's anything that a person can't achieve. Like, I don't want to stunt any of that.
No,
but yeah, he really did kind of roll back. I keep saying the word systematic. We can even say systemic is. We can even just like put that to the side for a second. Let's just use a simple word like obstacles.
Right. Normal human obstacles.
Normal human obstacles. Let's not even think about big, huge systems or whatnot. But let's just think normal human obstacles in the course of normal human lives. These obstacles are frequently still not people's faults, and not because they failed to take responsibility. Maybe some of them are, but lots of them, not at all,
Oh, I mean, you didn't choose who your parents were, what your genetics were.
You didn't choose some sort of, major medical situation that popped up with you or a family member or whatever. You didn't choose that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was, like I said, I'd be, why am I not the home run record holder in the world? Well, I'm not 6'4", 220 all muscle. Not to say that when I was a kid and I was playing baseball, I didn't work out all the time, and I didn't want to be 6'4", 220 all muscle and be able to hit a fucking 600-foot home run, but just physically was never going to be able to do that. I didn't get down on myself. What I did was I changed my style of hitting, and it's like, I'll just hit a lot of fucking singles and doubles, and I'll just hit for percentage. I changed the goal. Why? Because I had to dial it back to reality, right? And sometimes you just have to change your expectations and dial it back to reality. Those are like we talked about, the 4 things. You can either, when you talk about financial goals, you can make more money. Your money you can invest it more risky and have it try and earn more for you, which is really risky. You can either live on less or you can just alter your goals. And a lot of times you got to do some combination of all those.
Right. I was going to say a lot of times attacking just one of those isn't the strongest route, you know?
No, it's usually the laziest route. But they're going to do the whole, well, you just have to live on less and strive harder. And it's like, you know, but if I have scoliosis, I'm not going to be the greatest track runner ever. So you're being ridiculous. Just to use a comparison, because he used addicts as an example, I think I can use somebody with another disease to sit there and go, it totally disproves his point. And like I said, you notice how he backtracked circumstance right away? Because his thinking is so fucking backwards that as soon as he runs up against it, he's got to go, oh, wait, no, circumstance does factor in shit. But now I sound stupid because I just said it didn't. So we'll listen to him for another minute, but and you see they're just kissing his ass, but it's like, this is the secret sauce. This was it. This was the secret, the one thing. And
I would like to point out a win for me because he didn't use the P word, but if you listen, that was personal responsibility, folks. That was his answer.
That was always his answer. And then he backtracked it. As soon as, what's the secret sauce? He had to backtrack everything he just fucking said. It's so weak.
But that doesn't. But and you should be honest enough with yourself so it's actually something compelling to you. You know, the other thing we ask people to do, and I'm talking about this because it's very practical, is you might say, well, I don't know what I want. It's like, okay, well, what other people have that seems to work for them? You probably want a relationship. What's your vision for that? You probably want to have something approximating a family of some sort. What's your vision for that? Even if it's your parents, not children necessarily, not even a wife necessarily. Some family connections, some friendships, some job or career, some educational goals.
Yeah, see now
some
he's
strategy
just,
for dealing with
yeah. Now he's
temptations.
just he's just running off on a tangent because he realized he just fucked up and tripped over his own dick. He just had to walk back but think about family or think about friends. Yeah, there's other things too you can have in life. Other things, yeah, relationships and stuff. You know that kind of thing. There he is, king of the incels, Jordan Peterson, laying some wisdom on us. So that was your first introduction to him, wasn't it? Well,
yep,
well,
yep.
he's
Can't say that I knew him, but I don't feel like I've gotten any smarter.
No, all of his conversations are like that. He'll go in one direction and then he'll trip over his own thought because he hasn't thought about this. And then somebody asks him a simple question, and even like that was a freaking softball. That was a toss me hand up. What's the secret sauce, Dr. Peterson? You're so amazing. Well, the secret sauce is, oh shit, everything I said was wrong.
Personal responsibility with a side of.
Well, I'm not gonna.
Matters.
Well, I'm not gonna take personal responsibility for the fact that everything I just said was bullshit. But I am going to try and tap dance my way out of this interview at this point.
By just saying all the different random things I can at the end.
Relationships, people, camera, sky,
gold,
birds.
But they might be different, and have people, but they might be different. And it's okay if they're different.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, now I'm squeaking because I was doing his voice. Anyway.
If you sound like him for the rest of the day, I'm gonna laugh at you a lot.
Oh, it's just me, Dr. Peterson. Soon to not be Dr. Peterson, hopefully.
Wow, I cannot believe that he's being shaken down for all of that so much. Wow.
Yeah, well, he's said worse shit than this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. He talks about how women shouldn't be in the workforce, and you guys only wear lipstick to make us sexually aroused. Yep, he did a whole spiel on that for years. Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh, he's a champion. We haven't been around long enough to cover all of his crap, so.
Oh my.
And we probably won't, because a lot of it doesn't really apply to us. Anyway, well.
Sorry to disappoint, but when I put lipstick on, I'm not thinking about anybody but me.
I have the same feeling when I put.
Whether I think the color is nice.
It's the same feeling I have when I put lipstick on, Lacey. I'm not thinking about anybody but me.
I mean, you shouldn't be. You should just be thinking if you like the color.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So anyway, that was our show for today. Where can everybody catch you, Lace?
All right. As always, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com. You can find articles by myself. You can find information about workshops and course offerings. If you have questions or comments about any of those, you can email us. You could also email us links, topic requests, or if you want to come on and have a chat with us about some particular topic, we could possibly arrange that too.
Yeah.
Duncan, where should people email us?
Yeah, email us at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It's down below. Yeah, we should have a Discord up soon if people want to call in and we can work something out. So yeah. Well, great. Good show. And thanks everybody for watching. And we will catch you next time.